So, yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, Derek, something you were saying just now. When I was up in Northumberland, I was up there in the 90s working as a rep, sales rep on a builders merchant. I was working out of Hexham in Northumberland, and used to have to travel around the Northern Dales. And it's just one particular day. I was driving around in my company car on the way from one job to another, thinking how lucky I was to be living in such a beautiful area, and what a cushy job I had, really, because I was just calling on building sites and builders' offices. They became my friends, all of these people, lovely Northumbrian characters, you know. And I was on the way from a place, I was at a place called Bellingham, which is just sort of south of Kielder Reservoir. And I'd just been in to see a guy, and I was on my way to the next job, and I was cutting across country. I mean, it's so wild. It's open. There's not a lot of trees up there, really, but it's sort of dotted about, and you can see for miles and miles and miles. And I was travelling along this sort of shortcut, really, between, I suppose, I can't remember the name of the road. I think it's A696 possibly, and it sort of runs across sort of east to west, north of Newcastle, in the countryside, beautiful countryside. And I was cutting down from there, from a place called Bellingham to a place called Wark, which is like Wark. And as I took this sort of beautiful shortcut, it was like a one-track road, and either side there were fields with a little fence, sort of not very high fence. And I was just driving along, beautiful day, and I don't know whether I was just looking generally, but I looked in my mirror, and there's a motorbike behind me. There's a guy on a motorbike, and he looks like, the only way I can describe him is, you could either say he was like Dick Dastardly. He had that sort of look, you know. He had like an old-fashioned raincoat, high collar. He had a silk, well, looked like a silk scarf, and it was blowing in the wind, like Bob Dylan. It was blowing in the wind, and he had a leather helmet on, not a helmet like we know it now, but like a flying helmet.
Yeah, yeah. Biggles hat.
Yeah, and he had this coat was big. I remember the coat was sort of big, and this scarf was, I can still picture it now. It was sort of fluttering in the breeze, and he had like a sort of, I can describe it as like a sort of maniacal stare. Really, it was like a sort of a mad grin, and he was very close behind me. I went too close behind me. And he was on this old British motorbike of some description. It looked like a British motorbike, but it was all a bit sort of hazy. But that was just my first, as I looked up to the mirror, that's what I saw. And then I sort of did a double take, because I looked back to the road and thought, oh, he's a bit close. Carried on driving, and as I say, it was a one-way road. And I thought, well, I didn't like him being behind me, because it was so uncomfortable having him so close. I don't like bikes behind me at all, you know. So I thought I'll find a little lay-by, because there's loads of them along the road, and I'll pull over and let him go by. When I looked in the mirror again, and he was still there, and he's still grinning, and he's still got the same look. And so I was just driving along thinking, I must find a lay-by. So I found this little lay-by, and I pulled over to stop, and I'm waiting for this guy to go by, because I love British motorbikes, old British bikes anyway. And I just thought, I assumed he was one of these people who's just like really into his old bikes, and he loves to dress the part, you know, like a reenactor almost, you know. So I'm just sitting there waiting for this guy to go by, so I can have a good ogle at his bike and see what it is, you know, a Triumph or Aerial Matches or whatever it was, I don't know. Didn't pass me. He just didn't pass me, and I thought, well, that's really weird, because there was nowhere he could have gone. There was nowhere he could have turned off. So I actually got out of the car, and I just sort of looked around, and I looked like all the way around, because it's open everywhere. Just as I say, they have, I don't know what the trees are, but they just have these beautiful trees, very big trees, but they're dotted about. It's not like Surrey or High Wycombe. There's not trees everywhere. It's just like isolated trees, so you can see for miles and miles and miles.
Like a moorland.
Yeah, more like moorland. It's very pretty. And I just couldn't figure this out, because he couldn't have gone anywhere without passing me or going, and there were no little offshoot roads, nothing. And I wondered, you know, what was all that about? Had it been somebody who died on that road and periodically appears
shows
to
himself.
people. Yeah, shows himself like a little party piece almost. I'm still here. And anyway, from there, it didn't really shake me up because I'd seen so many things like it. It didn't really bother me. I carried on to this place called Wyatt to see a man called Mr. Beatty, who was a regular customer, a builder. And I thought I'll ask him, I'll pick his brain when I get there. But I didn't want to do it openly, because not everybody sort of accepts this stuff anyway, And so I sort of asked him very sort of, beating around the bush. I didn't sort of go direct to it. And I said to him, "Oh, do you know anybody around these parts that likes riding out on the old British motorbikes and likes to dress the part and everything and likes to ride around?" And he was sort of preoccupied with his work, and he sort of said, "No." And then he's going through his papers and everything, trying to find me what he needed for his little plumbing business, I think it was. And then I tried again, and I said, "What? So you don't know of anyone that drives these bikes around and blah 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 blah?" And he just wasn't interested in the bikes or,
Okay.
So I sort of just let it go. I thought he's preoccupied with his work. I'm not going to. So that was it really. I mean, I just saw this guy behind me, but it was like, it's a bit like, I suppose like Dick Dastardly to look at in terms of the way he was dressed. But also, I don't know if I mentioned it, he looked a bit like sort of Biggles, or how you'd imagine Biggles to look like. But the thing I still remember after all this time is the face, the sort of flying helmet, and this, like, I suppose it was silk or something. It was white, and it was just fluttering in the wind like that as he was going through, with the air.
That was like typical of motorcyclists during the war period, anyway, wasn't it? After the war, they wore the goggles, they wore the flying helmet, the scarf.
That's right.
And the big coats.
Yeah. So it's just one of those. It's not a great story. It's just something that happened, and. It's almost like one of those walk-bys we were talking about last night, except for in this case it wasn't even a drive-by because he didn't go by me.
and you're baffled at the end, because you've got no answers.
Yeah.
It's, I always try to, the things that have happened to me, you try to rationalise, don't you?
Yes,
every time. He must have pulled into a side, he must have turned round,
that's right.
Whatever,
Yeah.
And it's funny because I wonder if, when me and my daughter saw that UFO,
right,
we both saw the same thing because its shape changed 4 or 5 times.
This is the one in Bude, is it?
Yeah, Bidford, yeah.
Oh, Bidford, right, yeah.
But she saw a different thing to me, so I wonder, do we interpret things different? Okay, you saw that, maybe I'd have seen something else,
Yeah.
Because your brain's rationalising, this is a motorcyclist,
I presume it's sort of about the nature of reality in our own. We all have a way of decoding information that's coming into our eyes and our brain, and maybe we're all slightly different in that way. Maybe some of us are more receptive to seeing stuff that's off the dial slightly. Maybe, I don't know. So it's possible.
Have you ever had anything that's really put the wind up you? Because I know, like from a young kid, you were experiencing stuff.
Yeah, the only thing that really creeped me out big time was like when I was about 15 or 16, and we were having Sunday tea, and I had my granny round, or we called her nanny, and I basically, I was only young, probably 9 or 10, I suppose. Full on family, because I was one of 5, and my nan was there as well, and we were having a Sunday tea, which was absolutely fantastic. It was like, full on salad with everything, beetroot, tomatoes, salad cream, everything, and all these special treats that my nan used to bring over afterwards, cakes and stuff.
Blancmange.
Oh, unbelievable, like chocolate roll and anyway, I'm going on. So I wanted to go and get something from my bedroom. I can't even remember what it was now. And I said, I'm just going to nip upstairs and get something. So they said, all right, but be quick, So this was like tea time. I don't think it was even winter. I think it was daylight, So I rushed up the stairs, went across the landing at the top, and as I turned the corner to go into my bedroom, I suddenly felt this hand on my shoulder from behind, and I could feel the fingers, and it was a hand. I know it was a hand. So I turned round. I knew there was no one upstairs, and I turned round. Of course, I was just in shock, and there was nobody there, absolutely nobody there. So I went in the bedroom, slammed the door behind me, and I just stayed in there for ages. Actually, I think I was sitting against the door. And why I would do that? Because if something is invisible and it can touch you, it's not going to have a problem with a little bit of plywood door, is it?
No.
You know, it's going to go through if it has to. But I stayed there for ages, 15 minutes or so, and eventually somebody called down from downstairs, you know, what, hurry up and get back down, you know, we're having tea or whatever. And went downstairs again. I probably got, you know, you took your time, what was all, you know. But I couldn't tell them why. I wasn't going to tell them that, oh yeah, we just had this hand on my shoulder, you know. It's like, you know, you don't tell them, do you? So in fact, until I actually wrote that little story down in my book, I hadn't mentioned it to them, the family, at all. So yeah, there's lots of those little things. I mean, my younger brother, he's probably forgotten this by now, but he told me years ago, because we slept in bunk beds at the time, you know, both, I suppose I would have been 12 or something like that, and he would have been, he's 7 years younger. And he told me one morning, and he's probably forgotten this now, that he said, last night, he said, I woke up during the night, and he said a little old lady walked into the bedroom. And he said she walked in, looked up at him, just smiled at him, lovely looking lady, smiled at him, and then looked at me, and he said, I assume you were asleep, which I would have been. She then turned around and went back out the door again. But there was no little old lady staying with us.
Yeah.
And I can only assume, rightly or wrongly, my thinking is it was possibly like my Auntie Wynne or something, because she was a lovely, you know, she fitted the description. She had died fairly recently, I think. And I just think they keep an eye on us sometimes.
Yeah.
Or it could have been somebody who, I don't think it was somebody who lived there before, because I knew of the people who lived there, and there weren't any elderly ladies. But yeah, but that didn't freak me out. I didn't even see it. My brother did. So yeah.
I think the thought may have freaked me out. You know, they thought it was asleep and someone was looking over me.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
Whatever.
Well, the weirdest thing I wouldn't say, yeah, and frightening, I suppose. And I don't know what this was. I woke up one night in the early hours. That house, it was on that same Tillingbourne stream that we were talking about last night, because we, you know, all of my early life was spent living alongside this stream, really, from two addresses. One at the old gunpowder factory, but not for very long, only when I was a baby, to this other house where masses of stuff happened to me. Oh well, I kept it all quiet, but it did happen.
Did it happen to anyone else in the family? You know, I know that your dad had that experience.
I mean, I had this regular reoccurring dream where I would sort of create a fuss and sort of obviously upset by something. And I always remember my mum coming in and saying, "Well, what's the matter? You've been dreaming again?" And I'd say, "Well," and I was evidently always saying, "I want to go back on the farm." And she'd say, "What farm?" I said, "Back on the farm where Tracy is." Well, I had a sister called Tracy, a younger sister. And she said, "Well, Tracy's there." And in those days, you know, there were five of us kids, and in 2 bedrooms, because Mum and Dad were in one, and there were 5 of us split between 2 bedrooms. You know, nowadays that would be overcrowding probably. And my mum would say, "Well, Tracy's not on the farm; she's over there, and she's asleep." You know, and I'd say, "No, not that Tracy," and it was always the same thing. "No, not that Tracy." So like it was another Tracy, which was this weird dream. And that was just one of the things. And another time I remember waking up, and just above me, almost like one of these heads that you get like people who have bear heads or wolf heads or whatever on the wall in the old stately homes.
Yeah.
Just above me was this what looked like an Alsatian dog or something similar, like this big dog, but you could only see it from like the shoulders forward. And it was just over the top of me, this massive dog, and I could actually see like the saliva around its lips, you know, lips and everything. And it wasn't aggressive or anything; it was just there, and it was huge thing just above my head.
I don't know if I like that.
And I used to shove myself under the quilt and open it, and there was a lot of that going on. Like you'd know something was there, and you'd just sort of hide away under the quilt until it had gone, you know, and you'd hope it had gone. You sort of peek out. So, but I suppose that's like night terrors and all this sort of stuff.
You're talking about the bed and that. Do you remember when I told you about my grandson? About when he was very small?
Oh,
Aiden,
yeah.
I'll remind you of it, shall I?
Yeah. I'll probably know when you tell me.
Yeah, my daughter had 2 lads at that time. The eldest in his 20s now. But he was 3 he was 6 at the time, the eldest, and the little one was just coming up to 3, must have been.
Right.
Could have been younger, could have been 2-ish, because he was still wearing nappies at night.
Right.
You know, not in the daytime, but nappies at night. And my daughter was on her own at that period with the 2 lads. And a hot summer's night, her partner, he'd left home, so it was just her and the kids. Anyway, the little one wouldn't settle down. He kept shouting out and crying and whatever in his room, and which he shared with his brother. So she brought him into her room,
right,
and she sat him on the bed. All he had on, because it was hot, was this nappy. Right?
Right.
And he sat on the bed, and she said, "Come on, cuddle down now, snuggle down, Aidan." And he said, "My mother and father died in a fire." Now this is like a 2.5-year-old kid, whatever.
Yes,
you know?
yeah.
And she said, "No, darling." She said, he'd never used those words, mother and father.
Yeah.
Debbie said, "I'm your mummy and Ian's your daddy." He said, "No, my other mother and father, we died in a fire at the factory."
That's creepy, isn't
and my daughter was, and this is genuine, you know, I know this for a fact, Debbie would tell you the same.
Yeah.
And my daughter, a bit intrigued, said, "Well, who are you then?" He said, "My name's Et Dear."
Right.
Or "I'm Et Dear." And she said, "What happened?" He said, "They took us, the men in long grey coats," he actually said that, "took us, cut off our hair and made us, we had to work in the factory."
Right, yeah.
And there was a fire in the factory and we died.
So do you think they were like Jewish
I have not.
prisoners?
I've immediately thought of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
I mentioned it to my brother at that period.
Yeah.
He said Bosnia,
Yeah.
whatever.
Could be, yeah.
Now, as I say, it freaked my daughter out, because there was this little lad, my mother and father died in the fire in the factory. The men came and took us away.
Yeah.
They cut off our hair, etc. Next morning,
Right.
he obviously knew nothing about it at all.
Yeah.
Except for 3 weeks later than that, approximately, she was walking along the high street with him in the buggy, and he turned round and he said, "My mother and father died in the fire." And she just said, "Oh, Aidan, you silly," and pushed him on. But that stayed with her, you know, because as soon as it happened, she rang me up that day after and told me, "What do you think of this, Dad?" You know.
Right.
And I looked up the name, because I'd got it wrong. It wasn't Et Dear, it was Ept Dear.
Right.
Now, I've typed in Et Dear, and what I've come across is it's within the German language.
Oh, right.
But someone said to me that it was Polish.
Right.
But I don't know.
That would make sense, because the Nazis were clearing them out of Warsaw. And
so
whatever.
I don't know. I don't know.